A Dinner Conversation About Beelzebub at the Beach by Alle, Lloyd. Of Camden South, 2570. Narrated by Janine Penfold. The scene was shot over the shoulder by the videographer. The shoulder belonged to a New South Wales uniformed police officer wearing an identifying tabard, which had police emblazoned across the back and one shoulder of the front. The officer was in the foreground, back to the camera, so his cap and distinct checkered band was visible, as was the stem of his sunglasses, but not his face. He represented the rule of law, the creation of law, its reinforcement and supremacy. The principle the law applies to everyone equally. No one is above the law. The police officer was directly confronting a rabid rioter, part of an unruly mob, who was being restrained by companions gripping his right shoulder and arm, because he was out of control, wild-eyed, baring his teeth, looking more like a savage simian hooting and screeching rather than a human. The fact he was stripped to the waist and hairy added to the less than human effect, but he was in fact very human, perhaps suitably dressed for a Sunday at the beach, but demonstrating a fear and ignorance of the difference of others, and a determination to assert his notion of entitlement through destruction and violence. The tendons and muscles of the fingers, wrist and right arm were tensed. The arm was drawn back, ready to brandish the bottle as a club, or to throw the Tooheys new long neck he was clutching at his choice of target. He was wearing military-style camouflage trousers, which dropped below the waist, revealing 5 centimetres of red, white and blue underwear, decorated with Australian flags with Union Jack and Southern Cross. The decoration did not include the Aboriginal flag, nor the Torres Strait Islander flags, significantly. As the videographer panned left then right, the camera revealed a melee of men, some stripped to the waist, wearing Australian flags as capes, waving Australian flags, carrying partially full beer bottles or beer glasses, dancing on car bonnets, jostling and shoving others, and even chasing and assaulting people because they looked un-Australian. My mother, an English history high school teacher, switched off the TV, using the remote, and then announced, "Dinner is on the table, kids. Time to eat." There was no eating in front of the TV in our house in Cronulla. The dinner table was used as a forum for discussions of important ideas and topics, a safe place to voice opinions and to clarify them, a polite place where we were trained to listen to others without interjecting. We had even entertained Mr. Elphinstone, the local communist candidate, at our table in order to discover exactly what Karl Marx's theories were. My mother was proudly a 5th-generation Australian, making me a 6th generation. My father was a world-travelled Englishman, born in Colombo to a burgher mother and an English military man. My mother's brothers, my uncles, had both married non-Australians who loved Australia. They quickly became naturalised Australians. Uncle John had married a Russian lady who came to Australia via Harbin, China, and my Uncle Ned had married an Irish girl with red hair from Dublin, Ireland. These in-laws added to our family, and we considered all of their relatives our cousins. It was no surprise then to find an international dinner that discussion evening. Entree: hummus dip, green olives, green pickled chilies, warm kabis. Main: Sri Lankan fish curry, raita, sini sambal, lime rice. Dessert: tiramisu. Mother began the conversation while we were eating with, "What did you notice about the last segment of the news tonight?" "I noticed a lot of unnecessary aggro, because we have police and laws to settle grievances, grudges and complaints. You should not take the law into your own hands, ever." "I saw a lot of anger, violence and destruction and wondered why people do not first discuss what bothers them." "I noticed it was mainly men. They seemed alcohol-fueled too, probably lots of peer group pressure." I do not think alcohol and peer group pressure leads to logical, calm decisions at all. Well, I heard that troublemaking radio broadcasters had stirred up turmoil by calling the victims grubs and actually encouraging victimisation and tumult. I think the Australians present were guilty of what my history teacher calls stereotyping and generalising. Scapegoating, like the Nazis did to the Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, criminals and the disabled during World War II, only on a very tiny scale at Cronulla. Yes, we studied Lord of the Flies by William Golding, and there are similarities, namely, the exploration of two kinds of leadership, the charismatic, which appeals to emotive ritual, and logical leadership, which appeals to logic and consensual rules. Mother added, do not forget that Golding was highlighting the notion that Beelzebub, symbol of cruelty and corruption, hence all the flies, is deeply rooted in every human heart, taking little to reveal its presence. Cronulla was not always like this. Most of the troublemakers travelled here by train. It is easy to reach. In the 50s and 60s, we had a migrant hostel here that enhanced the town. The Greek-owned King's Milk Bar, the Dutch-owned Andy's Burgers, the Hungarian-owned deli selling smoked fish roe for school lunches, sweet and sour rye bread, pumpernickel, roll mop herrings wrapped around pickles, and Dobostort, the Venetian greengrocer, the Italian-owned cafe with the first gaja machine in Australia. Austrian and Hungarian Jews surviving Auschwitz were fellow students. They had been tattooed on their forearms with numbers, not their names, and their relatives had been executed because they were different. Race is a social, not a scientific or biological construct. Protect the disabled, the poor, powerless, voiceless, and helpless. A society will be judged by its care of minorities. I trust your future guardianship because this family has always been celebrating diversity. It adds to us, making our human family bigger, diverse, and better. The end.